by popular demand. And, there's a lot of things that continue to grow. And the creator space is one of those spaces. The creator economy is its own creator economy, paid partnerships, which me and Gwen have received our first one. We'll share more details about that later on. But we're super excited about it because it aligns with our core values here at the Rise Above Justice Movement. So, hello, everybody. My name is Zachary Mallory, and I am the founder and the host of our podcast, but also the moderator of this conversation, which me and Gwen will be sitting down each Friday. And I think if today was Friday or not, my week is all run together because there's a lot to get to and a lot to talk about. But, and do not edit this part out. And I want people to see what really goes into this. And
Oh yeah.
anyway, so we've been working together for close to the last 2 years,
Yeah.
since the 2024 election, which is insane.
It's
It
wild.
feels like it was an eternity ago, but it really wasn't.
Mm.
And thinking about everything that's kind of happening now, with Pam Bondi and Christy Garden Gnome, as I call her, and then Gregory Little Boots Favino. So we'll jump in and talk about that. But on today's show, so we're going to talk about a man who is due to be executed in the state of Alabama by the name of Jeffrey Lee. We'll be sharing more details about that. Um, Today is April 3rd, which is also the anniversary of the Sacramento, California mass shooting that took place a couple years ago. We'll also be talking about Pamela Joe Bondi, the GOP budget cuts, and talking about the war in Iran, and then also about conversion therapy. And then Gwen, you'll close us out with the Tennessee bills that are being introduced, being talked about. And then we'll kind of wrap up from that. As long as you are as long as everybody's paying attention and listening, let's get started. So, Gwen, feel free to introduce yourself really quick. I always jump right in, and I need to stop doing that. But feel free to jump in and just share a little bit about who you are. You're an independent music artist. You're my co-founder of the Rise Above Justice Movement. But there's more to you than just that, and I'm going to let you share that part specifically.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much covered it. I'm a musician and living in Nashville, Tennessee, co-founder of Rise Above Justice Movement, an activist, and also a content creator. That's really what my full-time job has become, as it has been for you as well, Zachary. So I'm so honored and excited to be part of Rise Above Justice Movement, and it came into my life, and we've talked about this at a time when really, really needed something like this, and just to see how it has grown exponentially. It hasn't even been 2 years. So, really wild. And we just want to thank all of our followers and now our listeners, people who are listening today. Thank you for being here. We couldn't do this without you, and we're just excited to see how this continues to grow and where it goes.
And yeah, and you said a key thing. It hasn't even been 2 years since the Rise Above Justice Movement. Literally in February marked our 1 year. I cannot think of the exact date to save my ass, but I know it's in February. I know that. And, after the election, we realized we have a lot more work that we want to do. We have a lot more things that we wanted to jump in. So, me and Gwen are like, hey, let's do a podcast. And I was like, do you realize how much work it is to do a podcast? But then we got past that first interview, which you were the first interview. And then we
Yep.
sat down and interviewed Lindsay Boylan. And then we interviewed Jeff Michaels and Maria Lacerda, the Jeffrey Epstein survivors. I'm sending all my love to them right now because right now is a
Me too.
tumultuous time. Um, and I cannot imagine seeing my perpetrator's face in the headlines literally 24/7.
Same.
Cannot imagine. Luckily, mine's a nobody. I'm just throwing that out there and just saying that. But anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
so we'll jump right in. So Gwen, we received a DM on Instagram that alerted us of a man in Alabama by the name of Jeffrey Lee. Um, Jeffrey, um, God, this is a horror story because it
Yeah, I'm
really
about to
is.
start crying
And
already just thinking about this, but please go ahead.
a jury voted for life in prison. However, by a single judge vote, overrode them to impose death. Alabama banned the practice in 2017, but won't apply it retroactively to Jeffrey. The jury never heard crucial evidence in Jeffrey's case. Jeffrey has a traumatic brain injury and a history of severe childhood trauma that impaired his impulse control. Jeffrey is now a man of peace. He is an assistant chaplain, a barber, and sits on Cairo's board, which is International Prison Ministry, providing guidance to others on death row. And we unfortunately received an update literally right before we began recording this today that the Alabama Supreme Court has issued an order to set an execution date, which obviously changes the terms of urgency and this call to action. So we'll be sharing more about Jeffrey, but for now, I want to leave it at that specifically. I want to do a more in-depth carousel post or like video post, which, Gwen, you and I will work on that. Because we need to get the story out there. Sonny Burton, we all came together, all of us who oppose the death penalty, we all came together and got Sonny Burton and Governor Kay Ivey of Alabama to do a stay of execution, which was really good to see. Now we got to work on Jeffrey as well. Jumping into the next thing that I wanted to highlight and talk about, today is the anniversary of the Sacramento, California mass shooting, which took place on April 3rd of 2022. 6 people were killed and 12 were injured along K Street in Sacramento, California. Two of the people who did the mass shooting are due to stand trial, and opening arguments will begin on April 21st of this year. I think this is something that I'm going to continue watching and continue paying attention to. As a survivor of gun violence, obviously this hits me extremely hard. 2 of my best friends were also shot and killed very unjustly. Luckily, both have received justice, but it was a very, very tumultuous time. And those are phone calls that nobody ever wants to receive. But I just wanted to take a moment and, recognize the names. God, I get emotional every time I start reading the names of people who died in a mass shooting, because in America, we have mass shootings take place every single day. What counts as a mass shooting? Any more than one victim. So if you have two, if you have three, if you have four, if you have five, etc., how many ever, it counts as a mass shooting. Um, so
Yeah.
anything that's over one victim, it does count as a mass shooting because it's one. So one is single, two is double, and then going. So that is considered as a mass shooting. The 3 victims are 21-year-old Jojo Alexander, 57-year-old Melinda Davis, and 21-year-old Yamil Martinez and Andrade. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. 3 people were also injured, or 3 other people who died were 29-year-old Devazia Turner, 38-year-old Sergio Harris, and 37-year-old Joshua Hoy Lachesi. So I think about it's just insane to me. It really is.
Yeah, it is. And even like, we're talking about gun violence, and I know Jeffrey Lee's, if we can even talk about that, going back to his crime was gun violence, robbery. He killed 2 people, and we do acknowledge that. But I think what you were even saying, people would be like, well, he deserves what he's getting, but when you think about what you're talking about, rehabilitation and the way he has
Mhm.
rehabilitated and, um, you know, I don't want to say like atoning is the right word, but he's worked on himself in prison, and to give people the death penalty, is that any better than what, is that going to make it better for the lives that were lost? And it's the same with mass shootings, just because we're under this
Mhm. Mhm.
same umbrella here.
Mhm.
Um, you know, of course, people want justice, and some people feel like justice is, well, crime for a crime or an eye for an eye. But I think in our society, we're trying to get to a place where we can rehabilitate people and,
Mhm.
you know, so that they can, if they're not going to re-enter society, at least that they can make it, make strides in,
Mhm.
to living
Mhm.
a more fulfilled life. Because like you said, people come from different backgrounds and abuse, etc., just like Jeffrey Lee did. I don't know the circumstances of the shooter for the Sacramento shootings, but it's kind of what we're seeing today in society is this complete lack of empathy, um, just based on like, oh, things are black and white when they're not. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
whenever I think about mass shootings, I also think how many others have happened since Columbine, and there was more
yeah,
dating back even before Columbine. Columbine was when the country really started recognizing, okay, we become really desensitized whenever it comes to gun violence because we also had the Pulse massacre that happened in
yeah.
June. We had Uvalde, we had
Virginia Tech.
Parkland, we had Virginia Tech, and then also the Covenant School in Tennessee,
Yes.
which
Oof.
obviously
Yeah.
this one hits you really really hard, and we just passed that anniversary date of that. So we want to acknowledge, these survivors of these mass shootings, but also the victims and those who were wounded. Oftentimes we hear the names of people who succumbed to their injuries. However, we don't hear about the injured and the
Mm,
survivors of those mass shootings. Earlier this year, somebody that I looked up to in the gun violence prevention movement lost her battle with cancer. So I want to recognize Cheryl Stumbo. This is somebody who I deeply admired. She was a survivor of a mass shooting that took place in Seattle, Washington. Um, this is somebody who I really looked up to. Unfortunately, she passed away from complications from her cancer diagnosis. And over the last year, my own mother has been battling stage 3 cervical cancer. Luckily, she's in her healing stage now. She has to go in every 6 weeks and do Keytruda, which Keytruda is a cancer drug that they give to advanced stage cancer patients to hopefully, get rid of this cancer that's in their bodies. Luckily, hers is just in the cervical area, but you know, um, I have a new fight that I didn't even know that I had in me, and she's inspired me. Um, but let's kind of dive in and talk about some headlines. So obviously, the number one headline right now is Pamela Bondi. Um, Yesterday, confirmed on Truth Social because and I don't know if anybody knows it, you don't have to have a Truth Social account in order to look at Truth Social posts, which is
Exactly. It's like a
wild.
Twitter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
literally, it is.
Yeah.
And they say that it's Truth Social, but it's not really the truth. We know that. But
No.
anyway, Pamela Bondi is out as Attorney General. Todd Blanche is stepping in as the acting Attorney General, and he's already stated that more Epstein files will not be released under him.
Yeah, he even said all the Epstein files have been released. Like we all know that that is not correct. Zachary, I want to ask you this because I keep hearing that only 1% have been released, and then I hear 50% have been released. So what what is the truth? Do you know?
I think it's between 1 to 3%,
See,
and
that's wild. That is wildly low. And some people are like, oh, it's 50%. And I'm just like, I don't think that's correct. I think that it's a little bit of the falsities that are coming out from Fox
so
News, etc., mixing with what's actually true.
so based on just doing like an initial search, as of early 2026, the U.S. Department of Justice has released 3.5 million pages of documents, along with thousands of videos and images related to Jeffrey Epstein. Um, it essentially equates to less than 1% of their total, estimated at over 2 million, later 5.2 million documents at that time. By February of 2026, the Department of Justice indicated they had released all the required files. Independent analysis and reports suggested that 3.5 million pages released may still only represent a small fraction, potentially just 2%. So, as I said, between 1 to 3%. So it looks like the magic number that we're looking for is that the 2%. So it's right in the
And
middle
I
of what I
wonder
stated.
what the percentage of those are that are redacted,
Oh
Like,
God. And it's a massive
so
amount. And
there has to
remember,
be point whatever that's actually unredacted
and
released.
remember, they released these victims' names. They released the survivors' names and did not unredact them as they weren't supposed to redact you know, well, they were supposed to redact, but they're redacting the wrong thing. They were only
Yeah.
supposed to redact personal identifying information of the survivors, not of Donald Trump, not of Elon Musk, not of all of these other
Yeah.
powerful billionaires and tech bros. They were only supposed to redact the survivor names, which they failed to do, as was required. That was passed unanimously by Congress in both chambers,
Yeah.
except for one.
One. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Whatever his name is.
that's a whole nother
That
conversation.
dude.
But it's just it, these are also the same people that continue to confirm these appointees to this administration, right? So
Right.
it's like this double jeopardy thing. The only reason, and I believe this firmly, the only reason that Congress passed this is to get people to shut the hell up so they can focus on their
Yeah.
re-elections. We already
Yeah.
know why a lot of the GOP and even some of the Democrats also voted for this, because I have heard it from Democrats' mouths as well. Like, why is this so important whenever we have this, XYZ? These are also the same ones that continue to vote for funding for ICE to continue
Uh-huh.
doing what they're doing. Um, Anywho, but Pam Bondi. So, Gwen,
Pam Bondi.
you and I sat through virtually and listened to
The whole thing.
this
Yes.
ridiculous last deposition that she did. I believe it was in January
It
or February,
was
right?
February 11th. February 11th.
And
Yeah.
I know you took notes, so feel free
Yeah.
to kind of like talk about that for a second and what you heard, which it's very painful to listen to, but
Mm.
kind of
I
highlight some of
mean,
those things that
yeah.
you heard.
I mean, the first one off the bat, so I literally took notes and I verbatim, Pam Bondi starts by saying, "We are committed to do everything to work with the survivors." And we know what happened in that hearing. She wouldn't even stand up to look and tell the survivors, which she hasn't met with, but this was confirmed in the hearing. They said that the DOJ never answered any of their calls to talk to them. And so blatantly lying off the bat, right? And we knew this. We know this administration lies, but the way Pam Bondi did it was kind of like a mean girl in high school who literally she brought a burn book of all of the Democrats who had gone to the DOJ and looked at the files and literally was ready to combat them. So they were basically there was surveillance on anyone who's looking at the files, so that she could go in and attack them rather than answer questions. And we had a video that we posted for Rise Above Justice Movement from that day that went viral, of
Still
Pam
going viral.
Bondi still going viral, literally lying under oath. Representative Ted Lieu asked her if had asked her a question about apologize. I sent my notes here somewhere about oh were any of the survivors that Donald Trump had been partying with, were they underage? And she just went off the handle, and you can go to our page. We have it on there. Just saying this is so ridiculous. Like, and just basically talking about how the Dow was doing well, which also is a lie, and
Yes.
just flew off the handle instead of answering the question. And this was the whole time. And then she
And
kept deflecting all the questions at Representative Lieu, asking why didn't Merrick Garland look into the Epstein files? And of course, we agree with that. But then it's just like as another sort of just deflecting, deflecting, deflecting. And the whole time, my heart just went out to all the survivors there, and some of whom are our friends that we've interviewed on our podcast, which you said, Zachary. And it's such a slap in the face to survivors. Um,
And
and there
also
was,
keep in mind, oh,
yeah.
wait, go ahead. You're about to hit a good point. Oh,
I just want to mention too, like, no one talked about this, but they literally cut off Jasmine Crockett well, she had like a full time. I guess what every representative gets like what 5 minutes. They cut her off right away because she was quoting a USA Today article about she just started right off the bat talking about Trump's plummeting approval ratings, how they related to the Epstein files. They cut her off, and they didn't do that to any other representative. And that again is because she's a woman, she's a black woman. speaking the truth. And I was just like stunned. We shouldn't be stunned at this point, but I was just like, this is just plain. And then I can't remember, there was some old white guy, white male representative who
Mhm.
was like, uh, yeah, while people are yelling, they said she was yelling. So, and the person who's yelling is Pam Bondi. So,
Exactly. And
they're telling Jasmine Crockett that I was like, this is so racist and sexist and all the above, you know?
so one of the things to also keep in mind is Pamela Bondi only spent from February of 2025, whenever she was confirmed by the US Senate, literally to April 2nd of 2026. She was only in this role for a little over a year.
Right.
And prior to serving in this Trump administration, she also served as the 37th Attorney General of Florida from 2011 to 2019, also under the first Donald Trump administration. And keep in mind that she was the Attorney General of Florida, where Mar-a-Lago is, where
Hmm.
we've seen the files of Jeffrey Epstein in Florida. We've
Yep.
also seen Mar-a-Lago mentioned up to 1,000 times.
Yep.
She knew, she absolutely knew what was going on with Jeffrey Epstein. She refused to do anything and still refuses to do anything. It's all a part of their plan. It's all a part of this international massive cover up because this goes beyond, Jeffrey Epstein goes beyond just the United States. It also goes to Israel. It also
Oh
goes
yeah.
to the UK. We saw that. And, they have their own files and their own
Yeah.
investigation.
The UAE,
And
Saudi Arabia. Yeah.
yeah, and it just continued going. Now,
Yeah.
I recently learned, while we're on this topic, I recently learned that a United Methodist reverend is also mentioned in the files numerous times. She's from Missouri. She's from North Kansas City.
Oh.
She's from North Kansas City. She has been released by the United Methodist Conference or council that's in Missouri. But she served as one in 2018. She served as one of his advisors, and then in 2019, she took over managing the property of the Epstein Island. So she has very deep connections. And then I also learned that it's called a Gape boarding school, and it was a quote unquote Christian, like camp, like something like that was down in like southern Missouri that he
Yeah.
also had connections to, and that school ended up closing and lawsuits were filed because of the sexual abuse that the campers were facing during that time of being at that boarding school. I think it's a boarding school or it's some type of like Christian camp. It's religious based anyway. And as a Christian myself, obviously it goes against what I believe in. It goes against what my grandmother believed in, who was also,
Yeah.
high in her religion.
Yeah.
Um, but I want to kind of whenever I talk about Pam, my blood starts boiling because Pam gets under
No,
my
I know.
skin and she reminds me of that ex-girlfriend that you just cannot get rid of, that she's going to continue accusing you. She's going to
Yep.
continue saying, oh, you did this or you did that, or you're just a liar. And she doesn't want to take the accountability facts. Pam Bondi is not the only one in this administration. And I love how the women are being held accountable for everybody else. Christy Gardenome, Pam Bondi, and then I've heard through the grapevine Tulsi Gabbard could be let go, Cash
Yeah. I think
Patel
she
could be
might
let
be
go.
next.
So
Yeah.
there's potential like mass firings that's going to continue happening. Gwen,
Women and
if you
you go
remember
ahead.
right, during the first Trump administration, he did the mass firings. He did this, this, this.
Yes, she did.
Anybody who doesn't generate him money, anybody who fractures his very fragile white male cisgender ego,
Yeah.
sorry, he's probably going to send a cease and desist. Bring it on, you fucking orange tangerine. But
Yeah.
um, it's I think I watched too much
He's gonna
Breaking
be suing a lot
Points.
of people. I know, right?
I think I watched too much Breaking Points and seeing Kyle Kalinske go after him. But
Oh yeah,
um,
Kyle's amazing.
I've kind of picked up on a little bit of those name calls. But it's more than a name call because he has a very fragile ego. He's a celebrity. He's a TV celebrity. If you remember, he was on The Apprentice and he's like, you're fired and you're fired and you're fired. It's
Oh
literally
yeah.
this. And it's
It
pointing
gets
fingers.
pleasure out of that. Yeah.
And he's the only thing he gets pleasure out of. But anyway, um, we're going to continue moving forward. So,
Yeah.
GOP budget cuts. So, one of the things, there's a PBS article that came out today, this morning, actually, And the headline is by the Associated. It's from the Associated Press, but PBS,
And
publishes that just
Axios
like
as well.
all the
Yeah.
rest of them. But Trump calls for a major increase in defense spending, along cuts in domestic spending. So President Trump, and I use president in quotations. President Donald Trump is asking Congress to boost defense spending to 1.5 trillion, the largest such request in decades. Keep in mind, the Pentagon
Yeah.
has also failed 8 of the last audits. They
Yep.
don't know, they cannot account for all the money that they've received, but yet we're going to continue adding to the deficit, continue adding to that, and the window is going to continue increasing. The 2027 plans for the Pentagon were confirmed in a White House outline of Trump's 2027 budget proposal released today. The White House summary says Trump's proposal would reduce non defense spending by 10% by shifting some responsibilities to state and local governments. I mean, okay.
Which
That sounds good, right? But here's the thing. The other thing is they said that abortion rights was also going to be to the states. Look how well that's going.
and conversion therapy, so we're going to talk about that too. It's
Yes, we're
like,
going to dive
oh,
into that.
you can leave things up to the states, but it's like we're going to cherry pick what those things are. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Also, the states that he's saying are going to have to rely on you know, ha creating their own funding and all this stuff are like the his states, like the red states are the poorest states that rely the most on federal funding. So we'll see how that goes. We've seen how that's gone with FEMA because with North Carolina, all these red states that aren't receiving you know, relief for natural disasters because they've cut that funding. So,
I
you
see
know,
a red state as an uncontested state, and I see it as a state that is so heavily gerrymandered to
yeah,
cater to the conservative and to the GOP that
yep,
it's very hard for a Democrat to run in that area, and it is extremely hard. Um,
yeah. And we both live in red states for those listening. So,
during Trump did a address to the nation this week about the Iran war, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit as well. Instead of the military as his priority, setting up a clash ahead of Congress, and quote, he stated, and it's in this article from AP and PBS, quote, we're fighting wars. We can't take care of daycare, Trump said at a private White House event on Wednesday. And then he also said, quote, it's not possible for us to take care of daycare, Medicaid, Medicare, all these individual things. He said, quote, they can do it on a state basis. You can't do it on a federal. We can, and we have for many years.
yeah, of course, of course. There's plenty of money for those services, but they want to go to war.
I don't know about you. I don't want my money going to bombing innocent children. I don't want my money, creating this, World War III essentially and fighting Israel's battles for them. I don't want my money going towards that.
No,
Israel
absolutely
wants
not.
Israel wants to start shit. They can finish their own shit. We don't need to get involved in that. And these endless
Yeah,
wars, countless numbers of lives, our service members are being killed at astronomical rates. Those people have families. They
yes.
have families. My grandfather passed away in 2020, but he was a military veteran. He was an Air Force veteran.
Yeah, both my grandfathers too. Yeah,
I know he's
yeah.
rolling his earn right now, Gwen,
Oh
because
yeah,
I can envision what he would be saying right now. My grandmother despised Donald Trump, being on The Apprentice. She passed away in 2014, but she would be completely pissed off knowing he was elected in
oh yeah,
2016 and then again in 2024. She would be pissed. She was a very staunch
absolutely.
feminist. My grandfather was a union organizer. So
Yeah,
obviously I learned a lot from both of them, which is why I do the work that I do now.
yeah,
But also thinking about these budget cuts, Tennessee is a state that will be very heavily impacted by these budget cuts. Already has a very low budget and is very low on the education like ranking.
and I think
Um,
it we rank last in
yes,
quality of life in
yep.
Tennessee of all
And
50
then
states.
one of the other things I want to mention is, during the No Kings rally, Memphis, Tennessee used very excessive force against
Mm,
protesters. And the pictures, if you compare them to what it looked like during like the Martin Luther King Jr. era. And John Lewis was also with him, former
yeah,
congressman who is now passed away. If you look at those images, it's like we're going backwards. We already
yeah,
took the country back, 50 plus years whenever we overturned Roe v. Wade, or I shouldn't say we, because we the people support,
yeah, right.
abortion access, because abortion
People's right
access
to choose. Yeah,
it's literally, yes, And thinking about that and kind of like getting, knee deep into it, but these data centers that are also popping up across the country, Tennessee has been deeply impacted
Yeah.
by these data centers. You talked about quality of life. It uses a lot of water, which the
Yep.
water in the United States, is already starting to shrink. I mean, Flint, Michigan still doesn't have clean drinking water after
So
many, many, many
crazy.
years,
Yeah.
which not just under the Trump administration, this dates back, but um, kind of like the Epstein survivors, there's 5 administrations that have failed these Epstein survivors.
Absolutely.
Thinking back, this isn't just Trump. This is also Biden. This is Obama. This is, Trump again. Like
Yeah, of
it
course.
George Bush. It dates all the
Yeah.
way back. They've been fighting it for 30 plus years. And thinking about that, and thinking about everything that's going on right now, what else along these budget cuts do you think is going to impact Tennessee? What more do you see is going to hit really hard? Because, like you said, you already ranked last, or presumably last, in quality of life. But also think about healthcare access. Think about abortion
Yeah.
access. Think about what you see. Kind of fill people in on what else is it going to impact in Tennessee with these budget cuts.
Yeah, especially with this administration being so
Mhm.
heavily involved with what's happening in Tennessee, and even Stephen Miller is saying he's going to throw ice here first, and kind of plan. We're like the guinea pigs for their, their I guess their ice raid tactics, like all these new things. And with the data centers, I know Memphis is one of those areas, obviously predominantly Black areas where there are these data centers, and not only are they bad for the water, but the environment. They're really loud. People's quality of life are, they've been showing up to town halls saying like, I can't sleep, my child can't sleep, where my family's getting sick from these data centers. Again, Elon Musk heavily involved here as well.
Mhm.
Um, and Justin Pearson is one of the representatives of, one of the Tennessee Three who has been fighting this. And I don't know where they stand because they're up against, unfortunately, our resources have been so stripped here in Tennessee. I don't know how much they can do against these like huge billionaire tech
Mhm.
oligarch kind of people in this administration, which backs the tech oligarchs fully, right?
Right.
So
It
that
encourages
there's
them.
and encourages them. So it's of course places where people of color live are like going to be, predominantly hit, and it's just absolutely disgusting what's happening here there. And then we have, cuts to the SNAP program here. And we have a Tennessee grocery tax. So our grocery taxes, people will go over to the Kentucky line if they can afford to do that, if they can drive over there, just so they can have cheaper groceries. And it does make a difference. My friend Allie Phillips, who's running for office right now, she does this with her family. She has done this with her family, where she goes over the Kentucky line, and it's like, it's crazy, the Tennessee grocery tax on top of that. And then our healthcare system. We're one of the highest or states for maternal mortality rates. And of course, again, affecting people of color the most, women of color. And then the amount of infant mortality and women who haven't been able to get the health care they need and deserve. And the gender affirming care that's been stripped from our state as well. So we're seeing suicide rates going up here. We're seeing overall, we're having medical deserts because ho rural hospitals are being
For
forced to
closing.
close. And I know I'm talking about Tennessee specifically, but this is happening all over the
Across the country.
country, and it's very scary. And I have family, my parents live in a rural area in Georgia, and I'm scared that their hospital is going to close because yes, they live, an hour and a half outside of a major city, but what if something happens? They have to drive an hour and a half to get medical care. So, um,
And
you
anything can
know,
happen within, and these are the things that run through people's heads all the time. It's like, well, if this hospital closes because my neighbor decided to vote against their own human rights and against their own
yeah,
healthcare, that's really what it comes down to, especially in those rural areas. You might have a blue dot, but they're surrounded in like the sea of red, right?
right,
And thinking
exactly.
about that, the White House and the Trump administration launched a Memphis quote unquote, or I'm going to put this in parentheses or, quotations, Memphis Safe Task Force or MSTF, which launched in September of 2025 by the Trump administration. which is supposed to be a multi-agency initiative combining federal law enforcement, the Tennessee National Guard, and local police to quote unquote combat violent crime. And then they also stated that, and I don't know where they pull these numbers out. Well, we know where they pull them out, same place they have the Epstein files. But as of March 2026, the task force, quote unquote, and this is on the White House website, whitehouse.gov, the task force reported over 7,400 arrests, 1,200 plus illegal firearms seized. Oh, now they care about illegal firearms?
Yeah.
What about these school shootings that happened under his administration? Mind you, some of the worst school shootings in American history happened under the Donald Trump administration. And then a 43% reduction in overall crime. I call bullshit on this, and I don't know where they pull these numbers from. I want to see the data. I want to see the outline of this because I don't believe this for 1 second. I think this is completely false.
It is because I remember Pam Bondi mentioning it in the February 11th
Mhm.
hearing, saying that we have the lowest murder rate in 125 years, which is false.
Which the murder
And
rate is on the individual cities, not because of the federal government. That is on the individual
exactly.
states,
And if
tackling that.
anything, it was down because of the Biden
Mhm.
administration during
Mhm.
then. And the other thing that relates to that too is that the irony of going back to this hearing on February 11th, Jim Jordan being the
The
head, the
chair.
House, the chairman, when he's literally in the files and he said, like, quote unquote, Trump's Justice Department protected people's beliefs. And like we know that's not true because the way that they are using like attacking blue states versus red states, even though it's an attack on all states, really, because like we're talking about right now, they want to take away people's health care even more. Like it's already cut down to the bone with the big, beautiful bill. And now they want to go after daycare as well. And while during this hearing, GOP members kept calling Democrats anti-life, but they are the ones literally stripping these everybody of their rights and their health care and their child care, all of that. So I call BS.
So speaking of, thinking about Tennessee, House Bill 2532, which was to expand school vouchers.
Oh my gosh.
They advanced this bill to expand the school voucher program by 15,000 students, adding requirements for schools to report the legal status of students. This is literally bounty hunting.
It
It
is.
literally is. It's literally bounty hunting, and that's exactly
Yeah.
what it is. Putting them on a registry, saying, "Oh, this is a quote unquote illegal person. This is that. This is that."
Mhm.
There is no illegal human being on stolen land. I mean,
Exactly. And it's the same thing with the trans,
yeah,
they're putting
the trans
trans
registry.
people on,
Mhm,
yeah, the trans registry. It's exact same thing that they're doing and they're passed here and passed the House. It hasn't passed the Senate yet, but I'm
mhm.
scared it could definitely pass and get signed by our governor, Bill Lee, which,
And
he's a real treat as well.
and then also Senate Bill 1904, which was to just they passed this bill which will allow public schools to display the Ten Commandments alongside historical documents. I think it's ironic that they're passing the
While
Ten
while banning pride flags too.
so that and then also they have their Israel flag flying too. But these sorry, I have to add
Yeah,
that
the
in there every
United States
chance.
of Israel, am I right?
I have to add that in there every single chance that I get. But the I think it's ironic that these states continue to pass the Ten Commandments being on display whenever they don't even know what the hell's in it. They don't follow it. They don't
The
they don't
president doesn't. The president certainly doesn't follow the Ten Commandments. Like
know. It's just like the
are you
Constitution.
absolutely? And I have all these like elected officials have skeletons in their closet. These
Oh,
Tennessee
yes.
GOP members.
And some
Um,
Democrats.
of course, the
There are some
Democrats.
Democrats that do have very
Oh
troubling
yeah. Oh no.
pasts.
First of all, I want to tell our listeners I of
Yes.
course want to call Democrats on their BS as well.
Yes.
But because the GOP are the ones passing these bills,
Yes.
I'm just like I want to
Yes.
say like they have skeletons in their closets. As we saw with Kristi Noem's husband, not that he's a
Ooh,
politician, but that is running rampant in our in
hypocrisy at its finest.
yes,
You're
yes,
gonna sit
exactly.
here and talk shit about trans people. You're gonna sit here and trash drag queens. I feel more comfortable being in a room full of drag queens, and I'm not just saying this because I used to perform,
Oh
and I'm
yeah.
a queer person. I would rather, if I was to be a parent, which I do not want children. I have a poodle that's a full-time job,
Yeah.
and then I also have my mom, and like everything else that's going
Of
on.
course. Yeah.
I cannot imagine bringing an innocent child into this world right now. I
No.
honestly cannot think about it. I
Yeah.
have friends that are freezing their eggs. I have friends that are going through IVF. I have friends that have had abortions or considering an abort.
Yeah.
These are very real, everyday things. I can sit here and I scroll through social media and I just see post after post asking for mutual aid. Asking for
I know. I
donations, asking for
know.
this, and
Yeah.
it's like, God, if I had $1 million, I would just give it out to like my entire community because they
That's
need that.
literally exactly like I want to help all the children that are already in the world. Look at Dolly Parton. I'm gonna make a video called about the Dolly Parton effect because they want to punish
Yes,
women who don't have children. So you're gonna punish women who help children like Dolly Parton?
I
Like I'm
love,
just
I love
the
Dolly Parton
me
so
too. And
incredibly
she's
much.
just an example. Yeah.
I grew up listening to Dolly Parton. My mom
Yeah.
is obsessed, and my partner has seen Dolly Parton perform live in person a couple different times,
That's really
and she
cool.
told me that it's one of the most beautiful, concerts that she's ever been to. Um, there's some other stuff that's going on, kind of shifting a little bit and thinking about it. And oh, also speaking of Dolly Parton, her sister is very politically active, and
Yes.
her sister
And
is very vocal on
she
threads.
is. She is.
Um, she cracks me up with her posts because she's the very political one. Dolly's like, yeah, I don't like Donald
Dolly's like,
Trump,
I'll say
but
something when I say like when
yes,
I want to say it, and she kind of just
yes.
yeah, exactly. But her
Dolly is
sister's
very
like,
passive aggressive, and then you have her sister
yeah.
that's like, boom,
Her
in your
sister's like,
face.
Dolly needs to be more political and speak out more. And I'm someone who also is like, yeah, but also I
Eh,
think the way Dolly exists and is she's doing it. She's doing the work, you know? So
And it's so funny, like sitting here reading their posts. It's so wild, but I love it. I love both of them, both of those
yeah.
ladies very
Yeah, me too,
much.
me too.
Um, Kind of pivoting a little bit, and I know that there's some updates about the Iran war, everything that's kind of going on. So I'll let you. I'm gonna grab a drink, but continue, kind of updating our audience about what's going on with Iran because I know that there was a U.S. fighter jet that was shot down by Iran. One crew member was rescued, and the search continues to look for a second crew member. And this is a developing story as of right at this very moment. These are live updates from like CNN and MSNBC, etc. U.S. fighter jet shot down by Iran. One crew member rescued by American forces. Um, a U.S. F-15E fighter jet was shot down by Iran. U.S. officials told CBS News the pilot was rescued by American forces, and a search and rescue mission is ongoing for another crew member. So oil prices are obviously skyrocketing.
$4.
The Strait of Hormuz, and quote unquote, Trump stated today that his plan is to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and quote take the oil, which is illegal. Um, but gas prices have spiked or has very spiked. Like you said, in Tennessee, it's over $4. Here in the state of Kansas, it's 394 or 384, 374, something like that. It's anywhere between that. But
California, it's 7. Yeah.
yeah, and which is insane, what your partner is
Hmm.
from California. So,
Hmm.
seeing that it's wild to say the least. And it it is so insane. And then I also see there's another update that just came out about 2 minutes ago, and we're getting like these updates in like real time as this is happening.
Yeah.
But there's another update. GOP senator says he won't support more funding for Iran conflict unless Congress declares war, which is a good sign. Republican Senator John Curtis of Utah said Friday he will not support measures to pass extra funding for the military operation in Iran without a declaration of war. Quote, I understand the need to replenish U.S. stockpiles. Bullshit. Already started a statement. It's like, and this is what I'm talking about. Like you can say something really good, like, oh yeah, this is great, and then the next thing is something completely that wipes out your entire thought, and then you have to shift your
Yeah.
thing, and it's like this mental gymnastics, but this is intentional.
Of
And
course.
he said, strengthen the defense industrial base and maintain the capabilities needed to deter China. Um, what? but okay. I support a supplemental focus on those efforts, Curtis wrote in Deseret News op-ed. Quote, but I cannot support funding for continued military operations without Congress having the opportunity to weigh in. Keep in mind, the War Powers Resolution, Ro Khanna, Thomas Massie, and several others introduced, they were voted down very narrowly, but they were voted down primarily by the GOP.
And I
Um,
think history will remember they did that on purpose. I'm glad Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie did that, because history will look back on the politicians who voted for and against it for
oh,
sure.
absolutely. And this,
Yeah,
we hear a lot, oh, well, Democrats don't have power, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They can still be introducing these bills, Gwen,
yeah.
even though they do not have the power. They are
I can still
literally
call them on their,
Congress.
yeah,
And what can happen is even if this bill does not pass, those members of Congress and the senators go on record. These are public votes that they are taking. They go on record. They can use that as a campaign strategy. If they were smart, this is exactly what they would be doing. Introduce these bills. These elected officials go on record, even, and this doesn't even just deal with just Congress. I just scared the shit out of my poodle because I'm getting hyped up, but he just took off. But he doesn't like whenever daddy raises his voice. But
oh yeah,
um, he freaks out. But this doesn't just go for Congress. This also goes in the state legislatures. Get these people on fucking record of voting
yeah,
against these bills. Get them on record. Get them on record. Because if we
yeah,
get them on record, we will know where they truly stand. We will know
yeah.
where it truly is. They can use this as a campaign strategy. See, my opponent said, X, Y, Z, or he's not going to do this, but here's his actual
Exactly.
votes.
Yeah.
Attack them on the policy. You
Here
can
are the
do it.
receipts.
You can attack them without attacking their sexual orientation, without being anti-Semitic. If there's a Jewish representative, we can do
Hmm.
this without being anti-Semitic. We can attack the policy, and calling out a genocide in Israel is not anti-Semitic, but saying that,
Absolutely.
oh, you support the genocide because you are Jewish, that is anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
there's a fine line in that, right? And I'm anti-genocide. Look what's happening in Congo. Look what's happening with
Oh,
Sudan.
I know.
Look what's
I
happening,
know.
in Gaza. Look what's happening like in all these other places across the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Genocide is genocide. The
Yeah.
mass extinction of marginalized people that have been fighting this for literally decades. Iran. Regime changes happen at home. We do not need to go in and do another regime change for another country whenever we can't even take care of the one here. So
It's exactly that. It's exactly that.
regime
Yeah.
changes start at home. Look what happened. I can't remember what country it is, but there was a group of people that came together and did a regime change via Discord, Gwen. And not that I'm stressing it, I'm just saying, things do happen. And we the people have the power, and we have the power of the purse. Congress has the power of the purse. They refuse to use their congressional powers to stop these illegal forever wars. These are war criminals that are going to continue being elected officials because who's going to hold them accountable? Um,
Right.
we're defying what the Supreme Court has said. I mean, don't get me wrong, Supreme Court's wishy-washy anyway, but
Yeah.
they have stated, they have ruled on a couple different things that this administration has done and ruled against them. One of the big things is before the Supreme Court right now, and this can kind of jump into
The big one. Yeah.
one of the next things. But I want to talk about birthright citizenship. If you are born on U.S. soil, you are a U.S. citizen because right whenever you were born, you were issued a birth certificate and a social security number. Does not
Yep.
matter the immigration status of your parents. If you physically are born on American land or a territory or a base, you are a United States citizen.
Yep.
Point blank, period. This does not need to be up for discussion.
Hmm.
Birthright citizenship is an absolute human right.
It is.
And it is literally insane that this is even still a conversation in 2026 because we want to have the power and control. Or I guess I shouldn't say we, one man. I realize it's not all men. I say this as a man myself. And I know, your boyfriend can also say
Yeah.
this, and like a lot of others that are on the right side of history, that we don't want our money going towards these illegal wars. We don't want our money going towards, driving LGBTQ to suicide because we state that, oh, the Supreme Court decision on the Colorado law banning conversion therapy for trans and gay minors was unconstitutional. What is so
Yeah.
unconstitutional about protecting a child? If
Yeah.
we claim that we are a pro-life nation, how pro-life are we whenever we continue to allow conversion therapy, which has been discredited disproven, and I am a
And it,
survivor of 2 years
yeah.
of electroconvulsive conversion therapy. And guess what, honey? I'm still fucking queer. It didn't
Yeah.
change me.
And the UN literally said it's a form of torture, and I believe it. I've heard
It
from your
is.
story. I've
It is.
watched enough about it where I'm just like, this is I can't imagine like having to go through this. So I'm
It
glad
didn't
you're a
change me.
survivor who can be here to talk about it because people need to hear about how horrible it is. And you heard me when they the when the justice, the Supreme Court decision came in. And I was like, wow, I'm like a little surprised at some of these liberal judges. And you're like, you know what, Gwen? I am not.
No,
So there was
the vote
literally
was eight
one.
to one. Okay, there was one
So crazy.
Supreme Court justice appointed by Biden. This is one of the best
Yeah.
Supreme Court judges you could probably ever have. One of the best
Hmm.
judges, one of the best humans. Ketanji Jackson,
Hmm.
incredible freaking human being. But the decision was 8 to 1. And this decision, it essentially endorsed a religious counselor's challenge to Colorado's quote unquote ban on, the discredited practice of conversion therapy for LGBTQ youth. One statistic that stands out to me, and I'm sure this number has obviously increased, but LGBTQ youth that are forced and subjected to conversion therapy are 4 times more likely to die by suicide or attempt suicide
Yeah.
than their heterosexual peers. And this was because one specific Christian evangelical says that her First Amendment right to de-gay somebody was a violation of her freedom of speech. This is a therapist, and I say therapist, in quotations, because this is not a therapist. This is somebody who wants to use her own personal agenda to drive a young person to suicide,
Absolutely.
which actually
And
goes
and
against the very licensing that these licensing boards are continuing to issue these licenses to people who continue to subject their own personal beliefs onto their clients, which you're not supposed to do. A nurse cannot do that. A
they
doctor
basically
cannot do
said,
that. Like, what
yeah,
makes a therapist any different? How is this a violation of her First
yeah,
Amendment right? Whenever it's not for you, it's not happening to you, because First Amendment also is freedom of expression. And it doesn't just go to freedom of speech, it also goes to freedom of expression. Being a transgender person is freedom of expression, which is why a lot of the drag bans have been struck
yeah,
down by either Supreme Court of those states or, like local government, etc. Because drag is a protected art form under the First Amendment because freedom of expression, because
yeah,
drag is what? It's an art form. So therefore, it is protected under the First Amendment of freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, freedom of, XYZ. But thinking about this, I worked on a Kansas City, Missouri ordinance back in 2019. There was 4 of us that came together and we drafted an ordinance and got it passed unanimously on the local municipal level. It wasn't the city that my conversion therapy happened in, but one of my close friends went through conversion therapy in the city limit of Kansas City, Missouri. And thinking, walking into that room and you just see like these people that could not care if you're alive or dead, right? There was more people that were on our side, and it was literally like the left hand side was all these conservative, evangelical, and quote unquote ex-gay people, and then the right hand side, what we saw pride flags, we see happiness, we see
yeah,
excited people, like okay, we got this momentum going. And I had, the press was there. They saw it. You can go to Google and type in, Kansas City conversion therapy. You'll see interviews that I did literally at the city hall. But we busted our asses off on that, and then I sat on the human relations commission of my hometown, and we got the conversion therapy ordinance passed there as well. So I was involved directly in 2 of those city ordinances. Now, while the state of Missouri does not have like a statewide ordinance or quote unquote a statewide ban, and I use quote unquote ban because we're not really banning anything, you're just restricting the access because
yeah,
of that religious, the right to religion and the, freedom of religion, etc. They can hide behind, like a pastor, right? So a pastor, unless they have a license, they are not prohibited from enacting a conversion therapy. They can continue doing it. Only thing that we can really attack as the American people is just those who are medical professionals that have a direct license. We can restrict them from enacting in conversion therapy practices, which is what our ordinances went after and what these states are going after. This therapist that argued before the Supreme Court, her name is Kaylee Childs. She's a therapist out of the state of Colorado, and she allegedly stated that her, and there was a group of quote concerned women for America. They were literally praying outside of the U.S. Supreme Court as the court heard oral arguments on Childs versus Salazar, a landmark case on conversion therapy on October 7th of 2025. Literally praying, are the Christians okay right now? I do not think that they are, because and they use the term Christian very, very religiously, no pun intended, because these are not Christians. These are just people who want to have power and control over what
Yeah.
somebody else does in their bedroom or what somebody else does with their own body. It's just like Moms for Liberty,
If
which,
you're,
by the way, have
yeah,
lost their elections. Um,
yeah.
and there's a
And if
reason
you're,
that they're losing, because it's a losing
yeah.
ideology.
And if your religion forces you to hate people
You need a new
for who they
fucking religion.
are, then exactly. And also, the Supreme Court basically said that torture is legal.
Yeah,
So
literally, they
it's
said
gonna
that, oh,
stem,
suicide, we don't give a damn about these children.
right. And the thing I saw Justice Sotomayor, um,
Mm,
who I was disappointed in,
mm,
she said, "Oh, well, what I want people to do is actually read people's like the judges, like what they said." And
mm.
I I
Or what they
I
didn't
like
say.
right, exactly. And I do need to read what she said, like why she didn't dissent. But I just basically to me it's all for me, it just seems very hypocritical because you're saying it's okay to protect some people, but not all.
Mm-hmm.
And for people who claim to be support all life, well, it's very telling what kind of life they care about. So
If we're
yeah.
going to abort anything, we need to abort the Supreme Court.
Yeah, yeah. They're a death
Anyway,
panel. They're a death panel at this point, you
yeah,
know?
literally, and it is. It's a nine-person death panel.
Yeah.
And go ahead and read what she stated. Do you have it pulled up?
Let me go ahead and pull that up.
While you're doing that, one of the other takeaways from the Supreme Court's decision is Gorsuch. My source on this is CNN. There was an article published on March 31st, 2026 from CNN. And some of the takeaways from, that they highlighted in it is Gorsuch, he's a Supreme Court justice. He sees robust First Amendment protections for counselors. Um, he he essentially wrote, writing for an eight justice majority, came down hard on the side of speech. He stated, quote, Colorado may regard its policy as essential to public health and safety. Certainly, censorious governments throughout history have believed the same. You are defending a censorious government, first of all. And he also stated the First Amendment stands as a shield against any effort to enforce or orthodoxy orthodoxy. I struggle with saying that word. In thought or speech in this country, it reflects instead a judgment that every American possesses an inalienable right to think and speak freely and a faith in the free marketplace of ideas as the best means for discovering truth. Keep in mind, quote unquote, this administration states that they support the freedom of speech, but yet they're going after protesters. They're detaining
Yeah.
and arresting protesters. Local police departments have a 287G contract with the Department of Homeland Security, which essentially is a contract between local police and DHS, where local police are acting as ICE officers going out and detaining these quote unquote illegal aliens, which, again, this is complete bullshit because Alex Preddy was not an immigrant. Renee Good was not an immigrant. Like,
Right.
they were shot and killed for defending their own community.
Yeah.
And also I think about Silverio. I can't remember what state it is, but he was shot and killed. And then we also learned about a
Keith
number of
Porter.
other, yeah, like
Yeah.
yes, Keith
Yeah.
Porter was shot and killed on, I believe
I
that was
think
New
New Year's.
Year's
Yeah.
in his own backyard by quote unquote a un
Off duty.
yeah, an off-duty ICE agent. And his name is left out of this equation entirely.
Absolutely. I
And
did pull up the opinion of the court if you want me to.
yes, feel free.
I kind of am like I just kind of scanned it, but they keep going back to the First Amendment, protects free speech, protects free speech. What I don't understand is conversion therapy goes way beyond free speech. and it's literally like an action, and
Mhm.
it causes harm.
Mhm.
So I don't really understand, and I need to actually like deep dive into the court's opinion, but I don't understand what they're exactly trying to say here about free speech when it's literally like conversion therapy is way more than that. It's an action. It's an actionable thing. It's like, like again, the UN has defined it as torture. So, yeah,
And
I'm
it's
not.
also been debunked and discredited by every single psychological organization. The American Psychological Association. It's been debunked by the American Counseling Association. It's been debunked by numerous other, NAMI, the Trevor Project, the Human Rights Campaign. They know how barbaric this quote unquote practice actually is.
So Miss Chiles is the woman who wants to continue, correct? Uh,
Yes, yeah,
yeah.
Katie
So Child,
Childs,
excuse me. Yeah.
Chile, whatever the hell is their
So
name.
they said, um, this is exactly the First Amendment protects many and varied forms of expression. The spoken word is perhaps the quintessential form of protected speech, and that exactly the kind of expression which Ms. Childs seeks to engage. As a talk therapist, all Ms. Childs does is speak with clients. She does not prescribe medication, use medical devices, or employ any physical methods. So again, what are they talking about?
So
Because,
you're going to talk a child into suicide.
right. So basically, they're like, well, she's not forcing LGBTQ plus youth to go to conversion therapy, but she is guiding them in that way with her speech. So again,
It's still a form of
um,
torture
it absolutely is. And
because there's only so many times that a person can hear something before they begin to believe it. What is she going to do? Sit here and read Bible verses to them? Saying, oh, homosexuality is a sin and you're going to go to hell. I don't know what Bible y'all are reading, but it's not the Bible that I read, that I was forced to read, but I read it in a
no,
different way. Like,
yeah,
oh
I
God, Gwen.
just, yeah. So basically, what they're saying is, sorry, I'm like, okay, so they this is all about if you can guide LGBTQ plus youth towards conversion therapy. It doesn't actually
Mhm.
talk about the act of conversion therapy, from what I understand.
Which is scary,
Yeah,
because this is the
yeah,
first of many challenges to these
yeah.
conversion therapy
It's
ordinances.
one step at that they
It's going
again,
to
this
continue
happened
building.
with Roe v. Wade. They just chisel away, they chisel away, and
And
this is just one step.
there
Yeah.
are some very extreme methods. The method that I went through, which was electroconvulsive therapy,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
obviously attaching different electrodes to different parts of my body, and it would send electric shocks if I was to get, quote unquote, aroused by a sexual
Rouse.
image that was on a
Yeah.
screen. Now, whenever electroconvulsive therapy, I am not against electroconvulsive therapy when it's used in the actual correct form, which a lot of people who are schizophrenic, or, I might be misquoting here, but my brain is scattered talking about conversion therapy. But, people who deal with different mental health disorders, electroconvulsive therapy actually does help them. But whenever it's used in a negative way as in acting in conversion therapy, and whenever I share the story, they're like, oh my God, how can that be legal? Exactly my point. A lot of people don't understand that conversion therapy is still legal in over half the country.
Yeah.
And it's still legal in the states that claim to protect children. And it's so
Yeah.
insane. It's so
And then
insane.
they claim they're like, oh, well, they're trying to protect kids from cutting themselves, but it's like the same thing because you're making, I've seen documentaries about conversion therapy camps where they'll have a child like burn themselves, quote unquote, and it doesn't leave a permanent mark. It's like with some sort of device whenever they get, aroused by someone of the same sex or whatever, an image. And it's like that is just literally torturing. It's like the same thing as cutting, which is
Yes.
something that you're like
Yes.
trying to say you're against and dissuade the youth from doing. And here we are,
Exactly.
here you are doing
And
the same exact thing. It's so disgusting just because you don't want people to be who they are. It's so sad.
it
So,
is. It's deeply disturbing to say the least. And I know we're coming up on time here, but
yeah.
is any last thoughts that you wanted to share with anybody, and let's kind of like do like a reflective moment So today we talked about a number of different things, right? But it all flows together. We talked about Pam Bondi. We talked about Jeffrey Lee in Alabama. We talked about the Sacramento mass shooting. We talked about, like I said, Pam Bondi. We talked about the GOP budget cuts, and I mentioned a lot of the bills that were going on in Tennessee. So we did cover
Yeah.
that.
Hmm.
We also talked a little bit about Iran and conversion therapy. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with our audience? How can people continue to uplift the work that we are doing? Obviously, they can go to our website, which is riseabovejusticemovement.com, designed by yours truly. I'm sorry, Gwen, shameless plug there.
You got to, you got
We
to.
also have a podcast, which this will also be uploaded onto our podcast, but it's exclusively a social media series, first of all, because we're going to kind of clip it and share a little bit about that, but also on our YouTube. So our
On our
YouTube
YouTube,
is
yeah.
youtube.com/Rise Above Justice Movement. All of our podcast episodes get uploaded there as well. This will be in video form on the YouTube and then audio form on the podcast. We're going to continue doing this show weekly. We're going to record on Fridays. The episodes will come out every Wednesday. We're following Wednesday, and we're so excited, to continue doing this. I'll be introducing a new co-host for the podcast very soon. Getting ready to hop into a conversation with her in just a little bit, and officially welcome her to our little but mighty team. And we keep it small because me and Gwen have been working side by side. And I'm talking directly to our listeners right now. We've been working side by side, and you've been my right hand person. My partner is also one of my other co-founders.
Yeah.
And, this new person will be kind of coming in and filling a role of something that is incredibly crucial and is having that that balance. So all of us aren't just constantly doing everything. I know this is going to help you out, Gwen, with your album that you have coming out later this year, which we'll talk about on a future episode here pretty
Yeah.
soon.
Absolutely.
Um, and you're going to continue being a big voice, but you also have your own stuff. And I think having this new person will be that very good balance, because I can message her and be like, hey, so Gwen's not available, are you able to pop in? She's be like, hell yeah,
Absolutely.
let's do it. So this is going to help you out a lot.
Yeah.
um and it's not replacing you, it's just adding somebody else who has that
Absolutely.
flexibility.
Expanding our team to be, with people we trust and like-minded people. And I'm excited about it. Yeah, for sure.
And we also
Uh,
have a
and obviously
series.
we'll keep doing social media as we've always done
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And we have a new series that we haven't formally announced yet, but I'll kind of give a little bit of a backstory. We're doing a very in-depth history of the death penalty across the United States. We are working with an organization who does a lot of advocacy around this, does a lot of calls to action, which is Death Penalty Action. We've been collaborating with them quite a few.
Yep.
Me and Ali Sullivan are interviewing several people who are experts against the death penalty and talking about the execution methods and how it's related to Nazis, and thinking about the firing squad, and thinking about Idaho just became one of the first states to have their primary execution method as the firing squad, which is going to be done by computerized. When this is going to be on on our next week's, I'm going
Absolutely
to kind of talk about
disgusting.
that a little bit,
Yeah.
because it's insane. It's insanity to me. And then I want to talk about a couple other stories as well. So next week's episode is going to talk a lot about the death penalty, but there will be some other headlines and things that we'll be talking about. But everybody out there, if you are listening, please be sure to share this content. Follow us on social media at Rise Above Justice Movement, riseabovejusticemovement.com. Our podcast is on our YouTube. You just type in Rise Above Justice Movement, the podcast. You'll find us. We're on social media again at Rise Above Justice Movement. And, again, my name is Zachary Mallory. I'm the founder and the host of our podcast. And then
Gwen
Gwen.
Levy, and we'll be here every Wednesday. We'll be here for y'all.
Yeah. And we're going to
Yeah.
continue doing this incredible work. And, with that, is there any word of advice that you would give to your younger self, Gwen?
Ooh.
I know you were not prepared for this, but
Oh man, I think when it comes to the work I'm doing, just focusing on that self-care, you can't give back to the world if you're not giving back to yourself. So that is one of my biggest life lessons for sure. So
and if your cup
especially
and if your cup is empty, you cannot fill somebody else's cup until you take care of
exactly,
your own.
exactly. exactly. So I would, all our listeners, I recommend doing the same. And, maybe we can do some sort of self-care episode at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also, doing some episodes around, like you said, around mental health and around self-care and
Mm,
bringing in some mental health experts too, I think would also be very beneficial. So, anybody out
absolutely.
there, if you want to jump in a conversation with me and Gwen, we absolutely welcome it. We will be doing more Instagram lives with some of our collaborators. Speaking of which, we put up a couple posts about our collaborators, and we have thousands of collaborators, Gwen. I
Yes.
don't think you realize that.
No,
Um,
there's a lot. Yeah.
there's a lot that we've accumulated, and it's a lot of content creators, it's organizations, it's Epstein survivors.
Yeah.
We collaborate very closely with Jess Michaels and Irene Lacerda, but also Virginia Giuffre's family, which the anniversary, we will be doing an episode around Virginia's story,
Yeah.
Gwen.
Yep.
This month will mark the 1 year anniversary since the passing
Of her
of Virginia.
passing. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll be highlighting that. But other than that, continue to uplift the work that we are doing, and we will see you all around. Thank you all so much, and we will see you very soon.